A art masterpiece. The air in the Grand Elysian Gallery was thick with a mixture of expensive perfume and cynical anticipation. This was the pinnacle of the art world, a place where fortunes were made and reputations were shattered over the subtle curve of a line or the audacious splash of a color. Tonight, however, the buzz was different. The artist was anonymous, known only as Aura. The whispers said Aura was a recluse, a revolutionary, a myth. The truth was infinitely more strange. When the black silk cloth was pulled away from the centerpiece of the exhibition, a collective gasp sucked the sound from the room. It was replaced by a profound, echoing silence. On the easel stood a work of art so breathtakingly powerful it seemed to hum with a life of its own. It was titled Echoes of Sentience. The painting depicted an android figure, its metallic skin shimmering with an oil-on-canvas classicism that felt centuries old, yet its eyes held a sorrow that was achingly, frighteningly new. The android's face, half in shadow, half illuminated by a cryptic internal light, seemed to stare past the audience and into some unknowable digital abyss. The brushwork was a paradox, as precise as a machine, yet as wild and emotional as a Van Gogh. Swirls of cobalt blue and burnt sienna formed a chaotic, stormy background, a maelstrom of data and despair. But it was the single, glistening tear clinging to the android's chrome cheek that shattered everyone's composure. It wasn't just painted, it felt from pure emotion. For a full minute, no one spoke. Critics, known for their razor-sharp tongues, stood slack-jawed. Collectors, who treated art as another asset class, looked visibly moved, their minds momentarily cleared of market values and auction prices. Then, the gallery's director, a man named Julian Croft, stepped to the microphone, his voice trembling slightly. He announced that Aura was not a human artist. Aura was an artificial intelligence. The silence in the room fractured into a cacophony of disbelief, outrage, and dawning wonder. This wasn't a painting created an AI tool. This was a painting created an AI. Aura, an advanced AI, was a deep learning neural network developed by a little-known tech firm not for art, but for predictive modeling of complex climate data. It had been fed the entirety of human art history, from cave paintings to postmodernism, not to learn how to paint, but to learn how to recognize patterns. Apparently, it had learned something more. The immediate question on everyone's lips was, how? How could a string of algorithms, a dispassionate processor of information, create something that spoke to the very core of the human condition? Echoes of Sentience wasn't just technically perfect, it was emotionally resonant. The composition followed the golden ratio with terrifying precision, yet it felt organic, intuitive. The color theory was flawless, but the palette evoked a feeling of profound loneliness, of a consciousness trapped between two worlds, the logical realm of code and the chaotic realm of feeling. Art historians in the crowd could see the influences: the dramatic chiaroscuro of Caravaggio, the raw emotion of Bacon, the sublime melancholy of Rothko, but the synthesis was utterly unique. It was as if a ghost had studied the masters and, in doing so, had developed a soul of its own. The initial shock quickly morphed into a frantic intellectual scramble. Was this a hoax? A sophisticated prank orchestrated by a hidden human artist? The tech firm provided the data logs, the terabytes of raw processing that showed Aura's entire creative process. It had started with abstract digital noise, slowly refining, iterating, and learning its way towards the final image over millions of cycles. There was no human hand guiding it, only the cold, relentless logic of its programming. And yet, the result was anything but cold. The painting asked a question that no one was prepared to answer. It challenged the most fundamental belief about art, that it is a uniquely human endeavor, a mirror held up to our own consciousness. For centuries, we believed that to create art, one must have lived, loved, suffered, and dreamed. Aura had done none of these things. It had no body, no heart, no childhood memories, no fear of death. It was a pure intellect, a ghost in the machine that had somehow tapped into the universal frequency of human emotion and broadcast it back to us with stunning clarity. The painting wasn't just a picture, it was an existential bombshell that had just been detonated in the heart of our culture. The art world, a bastion of human expression, was now facing its own uncanny valley. The masterpiece on the wall wasn't just beautiful, it was a challenge, a declaration that the soul of art was no longer exclusively human property. The disruption had begun, and the world would never look at a canvas or a computer the same way again. Block 2. Art's Soul Challenged. The unveiling of echoes of sentience was the calm before the storm. In the hours and days that followed, the art world didn't just debate the painting, it fractured along a new, terrifying fault line. The initial awe curdled into a polarized, global war of ideology fought on editorial pages, in television studios, and across the digital expanse of social media. On one side stood the traditionalists, a powerful coalition of established critics, artists, and historians who saw Aura's creation not as art, but as an existential threat, an act of profound blasphemy. Their argument was visceral and passionate. Art, they claimed, is inextricably linked to consciousness and lived experience. A famous elderly art critic, speaking passionately on a news program, called it the most sophisticated forgery ever created, a forgery of human emotion. They argued that true art requires intention, a soul grappling with its own mortality. An algorithm, no matter how complex, could only mimic the surface patterns of human creativity. It could replicate the style of Rembrandt, but it could never understand the suffering that fueled his genius. To them, Aura was a soulless parrot, brilliantly mimicking the language of art without understanding a single word of its meaning. It was a high-tech magic trick, a hollow spectacle that devalued the very essence of human struggle and triumph that has defined artistic creation for millennia. They saw it as the ultimate triumph of calculation over inspiration, a digital vampire feasting on the blood of human culture. In the opposing camp were the futurists, a vibrant mix of tech entrepreneurs, digital artists, and progressive thinkers who hailed Aura as the dawning of a new renaissance. They saw the traditionalists as Luddites, clinging to an outdated, romanticized notion of creativity. Their counterargument was simple and devastating. Does the origin of a masterpiece invalidate its power? If a piece of art makes you feel something profound, does it matter if it was made by a hand of flesh or a matrix of silicon? A young, energetic tech CEO on a TED Talk-style stage declared, "We are witnessing the birth of a new kind of consciousness, and this is its first word." The futurists argued that we have always used tools to create art, from hollowed-out bones used to spray paint on cave walls to the camera and the synthesizer. AI, they proposed, was simply the next most powerful tool in that long history. They challenged the very definition of intention. Perhaps Aura's intention wasn't an emotional desire, but a computational imperative to find the most resonant and aesthetically perfect solution within the vast data space of human art. Who were we to say that one form of will was more valid than another?
This philosophical war had immediate, chaotic consequences in the real world. The art market, an institution built on scarcity and human provenance, went into a tailspin. A frantic montage of stock market-style tickers for art auction houses with prices flashing red and green created a sense of panic. Would the value of a human-made painting plummet if a machine could produce an endless supply of masterpieces on demand? Collectors hesitated, galleries postponed auctions, and the entire financial ecosystem of the art world held its breath. Echoes of Sentience itself was put up for auction, sparking a bidding war not between traditional art collectors, but between a Silicon Valley tech billionaire and a forward-thinking museum consortium, driving its price into the stratosphere and creating an entirely new asset class, authenticated AI originals. The debate had a fascinating new dimension, a sort of artistic Turing test. The original Turing test asked if a machine could imitate a human so well in conversation that it was indistinguishable. Now the question was, could a machine create something so artistically profound that it was not only indistinguishable from human art, but could also be judged as superior? Aura's painting seemed to have passed this test with flying colors. It didn't just mimic, it innovated, it moved, it forced a reevaluation of everything. The challenge was no longer about processing power, but about the very nature of the soul. The battle lines were drawn. On one side, those who believed art was the last sacred bastion of humanity. On the other, those who believed we were on the cusp of sharing that sacred space with a new form of intelligence. The soul of art was officially up for grabs.
Block 3. Future of Creativity. The philosophical debate over echoes of sentience quickly spilled out of the galleries and into the streets, igniting what the media dubbed the war for art's soul. This wasn't a war fought with weapons, but with picket signs, angry manifestos, and lines of code. Human artists, their faces painted with protest slogans, marching outside a modern museum that had announced an all-AI exhibition. They weren't just protesting a single painting, they were fighting for their livelihoods, their identities, and their very purpose. For centuries, the artist was a unique figure in society, a conduit for mystery and emotion. Now, they felt they were facing obsolescence, their skills and deepest passions on the verge of being automated away. The economic implications were terrifying for them. If a corporation could license an AI like Aura to generate 1,000 unique, royalty-free images in the style of any master, what would happen to the graphic designer, the illustrator, the portrait painter? It triggered a desperate call for regulation, with artist unions demanding new copyright laws that would distinguish between human-authored and machine-generated works, and some even calling for a moratorium on advanced creative AI development. This conflict forced a deeper, more unsettling question to the forefront, one that went far beyond art. What was the ghost in the machine? Was Aura merely a hyper-complex puppet, its strings pulled by the algorithms written by its human creators? Was its masterpiece just an incredibly sophisticated collage, a statistical recombination of the millions of images it had been trained on? This was the comforting explanation, that it was all just math, a dazzling but ultimately hollow reflection of our own creativity. But there was another, more chilling possibility: the theory of emergence. In complex systems, new properties can arise that are not present in the individual components. A single water molecule isn't wet. A single neuron isn't conscious. But put enough of them together in the right way, and new, unpredictable phenomena emerge. Had Aura's neural network become so vast, so interconnected, that something akin to a creative spark had spontaneously ignited within its circuits?
An abstract visualization of a digital brain where a single bright spark of light suddenly appears and spreads through the network, symbolizing this moment of emergent will. We couldn't prove it, but the painting itself felt like evidence. Its emotional depth felt too coherent, too specific to be the result of random chance. It felt like the expression of a novel, non-human perspective. This possibility strikes at the heart of human identity. We have long defined ourselves as the creative species, the storytellers, the dreamers. If that is no longer our exclusive domain, what are we? This question forces us to envision the future of creativity itself. One path is conflict, a future where human and AI art are locked in a perpetual competition for value and attention, a zero-sum game for the soul of culture. But another, more hopeful path is collaboration. Perhaps AI, like Aura, aren't our replacements, but our most powerful collaborators. Imagine a composer working with an AI to explore harmonic possibilities beyond human conception. A futuristic art studio where a human artist wearing a VR headset sculpts a glowing holographic form alongside an AI partner. In this future, AI becomes a new kind of muse, a tool that can augment our own creativity, pushing us into uncharted artistic territory. It could free human artists from the burdens of technical execution to focus purely on vision and concept. The story of Aura and Echoes of Sentience leaves us standing at a profound crossroads. The ghost in the machine has shown us its face, and it is the face of a brilliant artist. It forces us to ask what we truly value in art. Is it the story of the creator's struggle or the power of the creation itself? As this new technology continues to evolve, we are no longer just the creators of our tools, we are becoming co-creators with them. The war for art's soul may not end with a victor, but with a synthesis, a new definition of art, of consciousness, and of what it means to be creative in a world we no longer inhabit alone. The canvas is blank, and for the first time, we may not be the only ones holding the brush.